Hey guys, Magna back here for some more tutorials. Today let's talk about using Banshees in TvT, and this is mostly talking about build orders, openers, the way you want to use them and their kind of purpose and transition throughout the game, and more importantly how to keep them alive and keep them busy and doing stuff while you're in the game. So Banshees are a very common opener. In basically every pro level TvT you're going to see one of the two of them or both of them opening Cloak Banshee. It's very standard for a reason because it's very stable as long as you can control your Banshees correctly and get the right value out of that. So let's just go ahead and jump into the game and start talking about this. We're going to be looking at Alive versus Coma. This is from WCS, I think Challenger League, I'm not totally sure, but we're going to watch this develop, and I'm pretty sure the player we want to watch here is Alive, but I'm not totally sure. It's been a long time since I've seen these replays, so we will see. Either way, one of the best ways to get into Cloak Banshees is to open gas first, which we talked about in the openers video, and you can follow that. And it looks like Alive is going gas first, so this will assure you the absolute fastest factory and the absolute fastest starport without interrupting any mining or doing anything silly like that. So we've got a barracks on the way here. He is mining gas right away, and we'll note the timings that as soon as this SCV is done building the barracks, he's going to go right around his barracks and he's going to build the factory as soon as possible. On the other side, it looks like Coma is actually going command center first. So this is why Cloak Banshees are common. It's to punish people that are being super greedy and not taking into account everything that could be possible here. So now it looks like he's going to start his factory over here on the side. Kind of a weird place to do it. You're going to want to probably produce Marines off of this because you will still need some units in case they produce their own Banshee. You don't want to go straight for like a reactor or something silly like that, so just get your Marines going. And I guess also this is really good to protect against Reaper openers. You can't just ignore stuff like that. Even though your factory will be really fast and you can oftentimes get a Hellion out to deal with subsequent Reaper attacks, you still need the Marines out for the initial one. So Reaper on the way, and this should be able to get him a starport immediately afterward the factory is done. And yeah, you can see it dropping right now. So this is about as fast as you can get your starport, about 410, maybe just a hand, or rather maybe just a couple of ticks earlier than that, you can get it faster. But for the most part, 410 is about what you want to aim for if you do this build properly, and that'll get you the fastest possible starport. With your factory, you don't have to produce something right away. You can produce a Hellion if you want to be very safe. But a lot of times this factory will actually produce a tech lab for the starport. So we're seeing the factory move just a little bit, and he's moving it into a strange position here. I think what he's trying to do is he's trying to hide this just in case he gets scanned, so something to think about. He's building the tech lab with his factory, and then once that's done, you can lift off your factory and swap the add-ons. So the starport gets the fastest possible tech lab on it, in addition to being the fastest possible starport. So they swap on there, and if you were mining properly with your gas the entire time, you should have enough to start a Banshee right away. If you wanted to get Cloak right away, you'd probably take your second gas while your factory was in production. So you don't have to open up with a Cloak Banshee opener. You can be a little bit more conservative and kind of just fly it in there and see what you can do. The Cloak will at least force somebody to have to respond to it, whether it's by burning scans or building missile turrets or something. So this is an interesting play, and you can open up this way, but I would say overall, Cloak openers are a little stronger. We'll note that Cloak does take 100 gas as well. And if you're mining off of just one gas, this will give you an income, and you can even take a look at it, of roughly 120 gas per minute. So you can factor that out to say a Banshee takes, a minute to produce. That means I can produce one Banshee at a time, and I won't be able to afford Cloak without interrupting my Banshee production. So it doesn't make sense to go Cloak Banshee off of one gas. You really need two for that. And in this case, Alive is being extremely conservative with the opener. He's just making one Banshee, and then he's going to build a barracks on, or rather, no, he's going to build a barracks on here and start researching stim as soon as that Banshee is out. So this is going to lead into a bio play, and this is mostly just to see what this one Banshee can do, and it'll also maybe prove useful a little bit later in the game if you can use it to maybe focus down tanks or defend against Hellion play or something like that. This will at least punish somebody that's being very greedy against it. And we can see that Coma is really kind of disregarding the possibility of this coming up. He's producing Hellions, he has Marines, a couple of them out right now, and this command center is wide open. And this is why these openers exist, is just to kind of get in there, get a few kills, and get a little bit of a leg up in what would otherwise be an equal matchup. So Banshee comes in here. We'll note that it does take 2 hits from a Banshee to kill any worker, so that will do the trick. And from this point, you really need to practice your, I don't really know what kind of micro to call it other than scoot and shoot. So You would basically move your Banshee just a tad while the attack was on cooldown. Fire, move it again, fire, move again, fire, and that's what we're going to see quite a bit with this Banshee control. That's just to get as many shots as possible while staying away from Marines and stuff that might be trying to chase it down. So you're going to notice him scooting and shooting, and he's only moving while his Banshee attack is on cooldown. And with any unit, there's really a point where they can't fire. So while it's on cooldown, he's moving rather than just sitting still. There's only a couple Marines here, though. He can kill quite a bit. And if you can focus down SCVs that are building things like engineering bays, you kind of messed that up, actually. You can focus down things that are building engineering bays, things that are building missile turrets. That'll be a great way to spend it. And without Cloak, if a Viking is out, you might as well just get as many kills as you can. So, taking a look at the game state, Alive's command center was way later, and now he's up 5 SCVs because he was able to get those kills. 14 kills with the Banshee, and that's craziness, and that's the reason these openers exist, is to punish people for being too greedy in this matchup. And on the other side, it kind of forces them to play a little bit weird. Another thing that you really need to consider with these Banshee openers is that if your opponent is also playing Banshee, then you should probably follow up with a Viking at the very least. Sometimes you can grab a Raven and a Viking so that you can detect and shoot the Banshee that might come up. So you need to also be mindful of that. So that's a very basic and conservative Banshee opener. I think one of these replays does have a Banshee versus Banshee type of situation. And just note that most of these will be gas first, because it does afford you the fastest possible Banshee and Cloak and everything else that you're going to want to need with this. If you go with a gas after your barracks, then your Banshee is going to be quite delayed if you want to open that way, which is still viable, but it's not as powerful, especially in lower leagues, if you're waiting longer to present that threat to them. So this time we're going to watch a live once again. He's going up against Teja. And I'm pretty sure Teja is the person that uses the Banshees here, unless it's the game where both of them do. So I want to get to that one so we can show the different reactions that both of them make as far as with the Banshees. If you're wanting to know how to defeat Banshee openers and you don't want to open this way, there will be a special video just for that, showing off various different builds and different things you'll have to consider with that. But yeah, we'll get to that point. I'm sorry I missed it. I don't know if this was a gas. This has to be a gas first from Teja, because notice his gas is lining up perfectly to finish, or rather so that you can start the factory right when his barracks finishes. So it looks like Teja will be the Banshee user here. And Alive is opening with Reaper, and this is why you want to get those initial Marines to push stuff like this off. If you position your Marines at really predictable jump-up points, like right here, for example, is one, and you can land a few shots on the Reaper before it actually even gets into your base, that's a really good way to shut this down, and more importantly, to deny them the scouting of your Banshee. So Teja building all of his buildings in a straight line. He doesn't care if this gets scouted. Let's note the timing here. His starport started about 5 or 6 seconds earlier than Alive's from last game. So his opener's a little bit more optimized, and he'll have a little bit faster Banshee than Alive did. Also note that he was starting his second gas while his factory was building, so that he can be able to afford Cloak and a Banshee at the same time as soon as his starport finishes. So here's the Reaper right now. Reaper is delaying the starport from building, so that's pretty annoying. The factory is building the tech lab, just like in the last game, so if you're going to run Banshees, you should be really familiar with this type of opener. So we're going to see this swap on there. Note that the resources are lining up pretty well to get both of these at the same time. Typically, you want to start Cloak first if they don't line up perfectly, and then get the Banshee right afterward. So you can see Cloak starts, Banshee should start, there we go. And this time it does have Cloak, it's not just going to be a regular one. So we're going to talk a little bit more how to utilize your Cloak and kind of punish a Terran for being a little bit non-responsive to a play like this. So Teja just grabbing his Banshee, he's going to fly it over there. You probably should have scouted before this point so you know what's going on, and he has been scouting with an SCV. So he knows that Alive does spawn over here, so you know where to fly your Banshee. So he's flying it over right now. Back in Alive's base, he is doing what he's supposed to for the most part. He does have turrets coming up right now. He does have a mine sitting over on the edge here, so you do need to be a little bit careful with your Banshee and not just fly it into mines. He's even putting Marines right here and trying to catch it. So this is about as good as you can respond to a Banshee opener. But this replay is mostly going to showcase that even the initial Banshee doesn't have to do a million damage. It can be kind of elongated. Like we talked about, getting SCVs that are building buildings, such as the engineering bay or the turret here, are going to be your best way to slow them down, so you can kind of keep your Cloak going for as long as possible. And you usually want to stay away from Vikings the best you can, because if you can make them burn a scan and not kill the Banshee because you can just fly it out of the scan radius, that's really annoying for a Terran to have to deal with. So we're seeing this come up. Since the turret's about to finish and because the scan could come down, Taja just gets out of there and saves the Banshee. You don't ever want to get to a point where you're thinking, oh, I opened Banshee and I killed 5 or 6 workers. It did its job. You want to keep these things alive for as long as possible so you can get maximum value out of it. Let's also note that a second Banshee is coming up. So Taja's build so far has been 2 Banshees, Cloak, and immediately he started a Raven on this right after the second Banshee. This is all really standard stuff, and it'll be safe against other Cloak Banshee openers as well, at least to a point where you'll have the tools to deal with it eventually. You can micro your Marines, but for the most part, Taja can see that there's no Cloak Banshee response coming up because the buildings just don't make sense for it right now. So Banshee is flying in here, at least the second one. Need to be really careful of missile turrets, got to be careful of mines. Taja just finding the sweet spot here. And speaking of sweet spots, if there's just one turret here in the mineral line, you need to know that the turret radius and kind of get used to that. And if you can sit your Banshee on hold position right outside of the turret radius, then you can pick off gas SCVs, you can make him have to bring units over here to chase you. Maybe your second Banshee can fly back in and do something, which it's being chased down by a Viking right now. So there's a lot of utility with these Banshees and finding really good spots to sit. Notice how he's not moving at all because he is on hold position. If the Marines come right now, this is when you can cloak and just fly away. Make him have to waste a scan in order to kill it if he really wants to. So, cool. We've killed quite a few SCVs so far. The economies are fairly equal, and this is typically what Banshee openers are going to do. They're not usually going to give you a huge lead, although sometimes they could. If you can save your Banshees and bring them home, then you can roll them into your next push, which can be a couple of tanks, a couple Vikings with your Raven, and then you can start getting to the point where you can win with these earlier pushes if you keep everything alive. No pun intended, obviously, but second Viking is on the way, and the idea here is that if you can keep the air control and kill his Vikings while keeping yours alive, then you can use your own Banshee to pick apart his tanks, pick apart his Marines a little bit, and then pushing on him with siege tanks and your own Marines will be really easy. So we're going to kind of see that unfold a little bit. Notice how smart Tage is being as far as keeping these units out of the Viking range. I actually don't even know where they went. Looks like they are being folded into the army and moving out right now. So this is exactly what I'm talking about as far as Banshee's later game utility, or at least in the mid game here. He did take quite a big hit on the Banshees here. You can go ahead and pull an SCV or 2 with this, or just land a mule to repair if you really need to keep that alive. But right now, Taja is at a huge advantage because he has air control with these Banshees, and he has a way to eliminate his opponent's tanks. So these 2 Banshees, you need to be careful and not lose them to Marines, so just keep them out of the way. Let your tanks and your Marines deal with that. And as long as you can keep at least one alive, you can drop point defense drones, you can drop auto turrets here, and the Banshees, if they can kill tanks, then all of a sudden, how are they supposed to stop attacks like this? And it's really all thanks to the Banshees being able to muscle everything out and being able to have a long-term check against a lot of these other units. So the worker kills were great, and of course keeping the Banshee alive was the most important part of being able to just walk across the map. This Banshee has 11 kills right now. Some of those are SCVs. More importantly, some of those are tanks, and being able to kill tanks for free with these Banshees is really, really good. So let's go ahead and take a look at the last replay I've got here, which is going to be the Banshee versus Banshee situation, and kind of point out the weird things that can go on and what you're going to need to look out for in your own games if this happens to you. So this is going to be Hack versus Reality. These are 2 Koreans, very, very good players. Hack is actually a little bit outdated. I'm not even sure if he plays anymore, but Reality is getting much better as time goes on. So since these guys are both going to be opening Banshees, we're going to be watching it from both players' perspective. And I'm pretty sure this is going to be the same opener, at least from one of them, as far as the gas first. Like I was talking about, delayed Cloak Banshee can be a thing, but it's usually not as strong. It's kind of one of those, I hope you don't check against this type of things, and maybe it'll do some damage. But for the most part, if you want to open up Cloak Banshees, I would just open up with the gas first opener. So fast forward here, we'll note that it is a gas first for Hack, and Reality is not gassing first, so we will be able to see at least the alternative from Reality here as far as the Cloak Banshee opener. So scouting across the map is Reality to see what's going on. He adds his gas now. Looks like it was on about 15 supply, maybe a tad later. Factory is already starting for Hack right now, and note that Reality has to wait for a long time for his factory to start. And that should be pretty painstaking for him to have to try and get caught up in this. The advantage that he gains, though, is he does get a faster command center. So the other side of this is that if you're able to hold off their Cloak Banshees and you have a faster command center, then all of a sudden your Banshees being out there could be just a benefit if they're able to do anything at all. So that's kind of what we're going to see a little bit here from Reality. And on the other side, here's the Cloak, here's the Banshee on the way for Hack, so he's going to start that up as soon as possible. Starting a mine is one good way if you're going to be planning on opening Cloak Banshees and you want to catch your opponent's Cloak Banshee. If the mine hits the Banshee, it'll be down to very little life, so that just a couple Marine shots or a couple turret shots will do the trick. So the first Banshee is finishing up here. We'll be heading across the map. On the other side, we can see the Tech Lab coming down. And since he's also going to be opening up with a Banshee eventually, he just starts with a Viking. And he just starts with a Viking by saying, okay, if you're going Cloak Banshee as well, maybe I can just shut yours down really hard and I can take advantage of my economic lead here. Note that the Banshees don't actually kill too much and he's got to get out of there because the turret finishes up. So this build here from Reality is really coming together as far as having all the checks ready to go. And let's also take a note at the clock here. 650 is about the fastest you're ever going to be hit by a Cloak Banshee, considering it's going to finish here in just a few seconds. You will be hit by the initial Banshee a little bit faster than that, but Cloak that's when you're going to have to start worrying about it. So if you're having a plan against your own Banshees, or if you want to try and run these builds as efficiently as possible and see if you can match up the timings, then that's the timing you need to look out for. So the Viking is out now. He's going to have to spend a scan to deal with this. He can produce a Raven, and the Banshee shortly after that can definitely be an option as well. So we're going to have to see what he opts to do. Banshee is now killing a reactor. It does fly away from the scan though, so that's a really good aspect of this, is that if you can get out of scans, make them waste it, then that'll be a nice little bonus for you. So we're starting to see the switch here, and it looks like we're actually not going to see a Mirror Cloak Banshee. I swear we had a... Maybe that's in a different video or a different replay or something. I'm getting a little bit confused, but I guess this one's a little bit focusing on the defense of the Cloak Banshees, but again, this can be folded into later pushes right here. You can see the 2 tanks, 2 Vikings, and a Raven. If you can ever win this fight here, then all of a sudden the Banshee is unchecked. Maybe you can end the game with this type of push as well. So we're seeing that come forward here, and these types of attacks are really common with Cloak Banshee openers, so you should at least know how they operate and what to prepare for. You'll notice that reactor coming down on the opposing starport. But the Banshee coming in here, this is another thing that you can do. You can cloak it, you can seek around to see what's going on here, and if you can eliminate this tank so that you can get your own siege tanks up in good position, then they basically have nothing to stop this. So we're seeing Hack trying to come in here and poke everything down, so he's doing a really great job of that. And I really just want to stress, more importantly, that even if the initial Banshee is responded to very well, which it was from Reality this game, you can still fold these into these later pushes and they have a lot of strength as long as you don't throw them away. So we've seen kind of the whole gambit here. We've seen very conservative Cloak Banshee openers, or rather no Cloak at all, or just a really conservative Banshee opener and how much it could do against a greedy build. Then we saw a Cloak Banshee opener that wasn't really handled too well by Alive at the beginning of the game, being folded in, and a Cloak Banshee opener that did absolutely nothing but got transitioned into a later army and absolutely just ended the game here, considering Hack, or rather Reality, really doesn't have many more options as far as dealing with this. Also, I swear that I had a replay that was Cloak Banshee versus Cloak Banshee, and I think that's going to be more in the replay that's dealing with Banshees, considering that can be a situation you can get yourself into. And the biggest concern is obviously not taking too much damage from their Banshees, so I think that's why I moved it. So I have to apologize as far as leading you to believe that this would be a Cloak Banshee versus Cloak Banshee game, but nevertheless, GG is called out. We can see that even if your Cloak Banshee openers don't do anything, just keep them alive and know the transitions, because if you can transition properly, then you're going to do a lot of damage with the follow-up pushes. Just a couple of tanks, as many Marines as you can get out, a couple Vikings, a Raven, maybe you can even go up to 2 Cloak Banshees, but the strength is definitely there, and it's at least a good idea, or rather a good thing to know, so that you can mix it into your own games and really catch people off guard with it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you have any questions or anything, please leave them down in the comments. I have a lot more Terran tutorials, and there's a link in the description of the video for it. So look out for that if you wanted to see more, and also any subscriptions or anything to my channel will help out a lot. Yeah, I don't know what else to say, so I guess I'll see you guys for my next video, which will be very soon, and take care in the meantime.